Our speaker today, Ambassador Siv, will give a very stirring talk to all of us, something you'll remember hopefully for a very long time. Ambassador Siv's life embodies the American dream. In 1976, he miraculously escaped and survived the killing fields of Cambodia. He resettled as a refugee in Connecticut with his mother's scarf, an empty bag of rice, and $2 in his pocket. Upon arrival, the odds were against him, but the words of his mother to never give up hope emboldened him to earn a degree from Columbia University and serve under 2 United States presidents. In 2001, he was appointed by President George W. Bush and unanimously confirmed by the United States Senate to become a US Ambassador to the United Nations. Ambassador Siv lives here in San Antonio and is a deacon at First Presbyterian Church. There are many other accomplishments I could mention, but we only have an hour. So, it is my great privilege to introduce you to a valued friend of Jeannie's and mine, the Honorable Sichan Siv.
Thank you very much, David, for the kind introduction. It is a blessing for me to be here with you today. I have been in America for 45 years, and this is the only second time I address a Christchurch audience. So it's very difficult to get in front of a Christchurch, especially for a former Buddhist and a Presbyterian. But I should mention that the first Christchurch I addressed was Christchurch in Greenwich, Connecticut. The church that my former boss, George H.W. Bush, attended when he was growing up, before he saw the light and moved to God country in the 40s to Midland, West Texas, as you all know. There's a few people, only actually 3 people who have been most influential in my life. My mother, who gave me life, my wife Martha, she's now in heaven with the Lord. She gave me love and showed me how to look far, to see, listen to hear, learn to live, love to give, and live to serve. For serving God is serving others. There's nothing more important than serving God and country. And then there was one George H.W. Bush, who taught me about life, love, and leadership. And for this particular time, I want to focus on what the 3 words that I really learned from him were faith, family, friends. My set of 3 words that start with the same letter. George Bush said early on that there's nothing more important than faith, family, friends. And these 3 components have been with me from the beginning. I came here today by taking a rather scenic route. I was born in Cambodia, a Buddhist country. I grew up as a Buddhist. My mother was a very devout Buddhist. And as David mentioned, she told me since I was a young age to never give up hope, no matter what happens. So hope kept me alive in some of the most difficult circumstances. 1970s was a very important part of our history because I was working in very dangerous circumstances, trying to save the lives of many people who fled the war-torn countryside to seek safety and shelter. The United States knew I would be in danger if I could not get out of Cambodia when the war ended. So they told me like 10 days before that if the time came, when the time came, you had only 1 hour to get to the US Embassy to be airlifted out of Cambodia. That day was April 12, 1975. I was told that morning at 7 o'clock, they came, that was the time without cell phone and social media, so they had to go in person. At 7 o'clock, one guy from the embassy told me that you have to be at the embassy within 1 hour if I want to be airlifted out of Cambodia. That morning, I had a meeting with the governor of a province where we cared for some 3,000 refugee families who were stranded because the road had been cut. So I thought that by going to the meeting, I would be able to save the lives of those people. But I miscalculated. And I came to the embassy after the meeting in terms of delivering food and medical supplies to those unfortunate people. And the embassy told me, the security guard told me that you had missed the helicopter by 30 minutes. So what happened was going to change my life forever. 5 days later, the Khmer Rouge came in and they turned the country upside down. They turned Cambodia into a land of blood and tears, into the killing fields. They killed anybody who wore glasses, a sign of education. They killed teachers, nurses, government officials, anybody who had not been with them during the so-called revolution. My mother gave me her wedding ring, a bag of rice, and told me to never give up hope, no matter what happens. Run, run, run. So I rode a bicycle for 3 weeks across Cambodia. I was captured near Thailand. They tied my arms behind my back and they were going to kill me because they suspected that I was trying to cross the border to Thailand, which was exactly my intention. But a truck driver whom I had met a few days before saved my life. He told the Khmer Rouge that I was just an innocent person traveling around looking for my family. So for the next year, I worked in forced labor camp. The whole country was turned into a huge labor camp. We were forced to work 18 hours a day. We were given a bowl of rancid soup a day to eat. At night when I went to sleep, I never knew if I would be alive. The following morning when I got up, I said I would make it to freedom. That day came on February 13, 1976. I was alone at the back of the timber truck. I said, now or never. So I jumped off the truck. I was caught in a piece of lumber. I was dragged for a few hundred yards. I was flung off and I began to run, to walk, to crawl for 3 days, having nothing to eat or to drink. Nothing to guide me except the sun, the moon, and the stars. I fell in a booby trap. I was severely wounded, but I was able to pull myself out, and I finally got to Thailand. They put me in jail first, but then they realized that I was a refugee, so they sent me to refugee camps. That is small, the size of a soccer field, and many suffered severe mental depression because they sat around all day feeling sorry about the past and worrying about the future. So I organized English classes, which was a win-win proposal. They were able to get some English before they would go to their adopted countries, Australia, Canada, UK, the United States, and New Zealand. And so they were able to get their minds off the sorrows and the worries and able to get some English before they started their new lives. On June 4th, 1976, 1 month before the bicentennial, I arrived in Wallingford, Connecticut. Like David said, with my mother's scarf, an empty bag of rice, and $2. I was exhausted and sick, but I was full of hope. I wanted to be on my own feet and to start my life on my own terms, so I did everything that came my way to the best of my ability. I picked apples in Connecticut. I ate a lot of apples, enough to last for a lifetime. Then I went to New York to drive a taxi. I had to take a test about direction, and it's all how they ask you, how do you get from the Waldorf Astoria to Yankee Stadium? I had no idea where these places were, much less how to get from one to another. So I just checked the boxes, and at the end I brought a sheet to the examiner. He looked at the boxes, he frowned, he looked at me from head to toe and said, "You pass." Then, as David mentioned, I got a scholarship to go to Colombia, and I got a Master of International Affairs. Along the way, I met this wonderful woman that you are so kind to get the flowers for her, Martha Patillo from Pampa, Texas. How many of you have been to Pampa, Texas? All right, very good traveler. It's about 60 miles northeast of Amarillo, and they say you don't go there unless you have to. There's nothing between Pampa and the North Pole. Except a barbed wire fence and 2 strands are down. But she was valedictorian of her high school. She was planned to student at UT, master's degree of library information science, the same degree that Laura Bush got. They were in the same school but different years. And she was just dreaming about seeing the world. So she went to France and got a job for the United Nations to Bangkok, and then God brought her back to New York. That's where we met. After we met on September 15, 1977, my life changed because she opened new horizons for me. That's when she showed me how to look far, to see, listen to hear, learn to live, love to give, and live to serve. And then I met George H.W. Bush, with whom I was going to work. In fact, I met him through President Reagan, because President invited me to a Rose Garden event, and he was vice president at the time. When I was standing there on the dais with the president and vice president of the United States, the thought never crossed my mind that I would be working at the White House. So a few months later, Bush was elected, and he asked me to work for him. When I walked in to work at the White House on February the 13th, 1989, that was exactly 13 years from the day I jumped off that truck in the jungle of Cambodia. That I made it that far in such a short time could happen only in America. And that was a great tribute to George Bush. And I mentioned a moment ago that I learned so much from George Bush. The first one was faith, family, friends. Faith, as you know, I grew up as a Buddhist. I met Martha, she was a Presbyterian. And then I spent more time in a Presbyterian church than in a Buddhist temple. So my transition from Buddhism to Christianity has been quite gradual. At one point, I worked for the presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church, Bishop Allen. At the headquarters, we call that Episcopal Center, 815 2nd Avenue, you know that. The visitors, usually the Archbishop of Canterbury, Archbishop Runcie, whenever he was in New York, he would be at the noon Eucharist. And I was always curious. And in the 80s, I had a very bad habit of writing reminders on my hand. Got postal stamps, call Martha, get milk, everything was written on my left hand. So at the communion, I went to the front and knelt down and opened my hands. And the Archbishop of Canterbury thought I was giving him a message, but he couldn't read it back upside down. He paused for a moment, he just put the bread on my hand and he moved on. But that was sort of my interaction with the Episcopal Church since then. So back to faith, family, and friends. We all have important dates in our life, and one of the most important dates would be the February the 13th, 1989, when I met George Bush, when I went to work for George Bush. But another one was December 4th, 2016, right here in San Antonio, at the First Presbyterian Church. I decided that I should be officially baptized as a Christian, and Ron Skate, a friend of Patrick, he was senior pastor at the time. He baptized me along with another pastor, Scott Simpson. Martha turned to me after I was baptized. She said, "That is your best gift to me." And then later I told Ron, that was your best gift to me. 10 days later, on December 14, Martha lifted off to be in heaven the Lord. I have seen a lot of tragedy in my life. My mother, my sister, my brother, and their children, 15 of them were killed by the Khmer Rouge. But losing Martha was the worst. But thanks to my faith, to my family and my friends embodied in the church, I was able to navigate through the grief without any problem. So one of the first verses I remember when I was working for the Episcopal Church was Matthew 25:35. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I've been a stranger, and you brought me in. And I thank you very much for having me today. And I want to mention one more thing, that when I work at the United Nations, each time I walked in, my colleagues from 192 countries look at me, and they saw you. They saw America, her strength, her greatness, her future. Each time I said on behalf of the President and people of the United States, that was my proudest moment. So thank you for having me. God bless you, and God bless America.